Almost going.
Okay.
Because I really don't know how long this stuff takes. Like you're supposed to push a button, but it's like, and then what? Like how long does it take to happen? So
Let me,
it's
oh,
setting
sorry.
up our YouTube live. Lillian, oh yes, you should definitely be allowed to record.
Yay, thank you. I want to be like Heather Cox Richardson and go, hello, everybody. Welcome to the live today.
Put us on the wrong one again. God
Oh,
damn it.
crying out Blitz.
What's that?
For crying out kittens.
I know. We're gonna have to, you know what the problem is that we have our email set up to the wrong Sky Notes account, and I haven't fixed it yet.
Do you want to go back and fix it?
I mean, we could. I don't know. No,
Delete that
no,
account?
we'll just do exactly what we did last time, and we'll just talk on here, and we'll put it up on as a recording. We'll
Yeah.
get the tech eventually, everybody. Hi, I'm Tracy at Sky Notes, and this is my good friend Lillian Bennett, who I adore from a fructose trilogy. And we're live again. We're doing these Friday lives, but the tech is just blowing my mind, everybody. I'm not having a great time with it.
Yeah, it's not as what do you call it? WYSIWYG as one would like it. What you see
I
is
like
what,
that word way better than intuitive,
yeah.
which is one that I would use.
What
It's not intuitive at all. Like it in my mind, this should be just push a button and go, but it's not. There's just lots of moving parts happening. So
the whole
we'll
time
get
I
it.
worked at Microsoft, I tried to have them adjust computers to suit my speed instead of how they would jam up all the time. Silly story.
Excellent.
Why are we
Well,
here?
so what are we talking about today? What are we doing?
So today we're going to talk about the ingress of Jupiter into Cancer and out of Gemini.
Yes. So a few facts about Jupiter and its cycle. So it's every 12 years it makes it through the zodiac. So it spends just a little over a year in a sign. And so it's not as big a deal as the outer planets changing signs, but it is, we have to look back 12 years to see what happened the last time Jupiter did its thing. So it's
Mm-hmm.
one of the longer cycles, right? Because we jump from Mars's 2 years, we jump to 12 years with Jupiter.
And
So
that's kind of the division between personal. Well, I guess Jupiter's still a personal planet, but it
mm,
is more generational because it's in the same sign for a year.
so I've seen different words ascribed to that, and social planet. Like if we talk about Alex Trenoweth and how she talks about groups of kids in school and grades, and how the cohort is gonna share Jupiter and it's gonna share Saturn.
Nice.
And so I like that idea of social because school is one of the first places we learn the social rules. So the
Yeah.
fact that the kids share the Jupiter sign, or only two, maximum of two Jupiter signs in a class, right? So it is a social planet. I like
I
that.
like that.
Hmm. Um, so where should we start first?
So let me just take a look. Let's see. How would someone experience Jupiter in their chart? What are some key ideas that you would express with Jupiter?
The first word that comes to mind when I think about Jupiter is optimism.
Mm,
It, and then the next place I go is beliefs and ideas. Expectations tend to fall under Jupiter, right? Because those generally come from our beliefs and ideas, some
yeah.
offshoot of that. And then wherever we want to expand, you know,
Yeah.
is
So a
going to be Jupiter.
talent or a type of study or
Can
a
be,
career, that sort of
can
thing.
be.
If Jupiter is nicely placed in the natal chart, it can indicate that. I know
Yeah.
some
Well,
folks, yeah, with Jupiter in the first and larger than life is just the idea I get from that. Like these folks are
yes.
kind of swashbucklers through life.
When Jupiter itself is gigantic, so that
Yeah.
idea of expansion and size is actually part of its physicality, you know? And so
Yeah.
somebody with Jupiter in the first house would definitely have a really big energy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And be
there's a
fun to
lot of
be around.
with the optimism. Say that again. Sotto
And be
voce.
fun to be around. Be fun to be around with Jupiter. Yeah. Yeah.
Want to have, want to know what fun is, kind of thing. Yeah, I get that. And then Jupiter has some association with religions. And when you were talking about ideas, I thought you were going to say idealism, because Jupiter can set things up so that you can't meet your goals because they're too idealized, or it turns it around from trying to aspire to something to trying to judge people who aren't part of it. And so there can be a little judgmentalness from it. Isn't that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
judgment. Yeah, it's the I mean, I've always associated it with the judgment card in tarot.
Yeah.
You know, the judicial process is a Jupiterian process, even though it's identified by scales.
Right.
It's under Jupiter's purview of rulership, right?
So interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Jupiter through signs, like my Jupiter's in Leo. So right now it's being affected by Mars.
Mm.
And if folks had like the sun in, so it's in Leo, so it's right next to Cancer. So there's not going to be a direct relationship there, but I've got my moon in Cancer. That's how I would think about it for my chart. Do you know do you know if you can think of any shortcuts for people, like if say somebody has the moon or the sun in Capricorn, and then here comes Jupiter traipsing around
Yeah, so it's
this.
going to make an opposition, you know, and anytime we have an opposition, you're going to, from your own point of view and who you are, the sun, Jupiter is going to shine a light on where you are. You know, do you still believe in the same things you believed in before? Do the things you believe in foster you becoming the best version of yourself and your
Oh,
sun sign? You know?
yeah.
It gives you, whenever you have the, you know, if we're going to talk Capricorn, the opposition, you're always learning about the axis. So we're all going to learn about the Jupiter Capricorn or the Cancer Capricorn axis. And and from that point of view of Jupiter being, we forgot to mention, so Jupiter really likes to be in Cancer. It's exalted in Cancer. And
I
so it's an honored guest in the sign of Cancer. So that's actually why it's a bit of a big deal in astrology right now, because we haven't had Jupiter in a sign it likes to be in five years, I think. And so to have the planet of you know, the greater benefic in Hellenistic astrology in a
yeah,
sign that it loves to be in,
yeah.
is a big deal, because we haven't had the luck of Jupiter in its own sign or in a sign it likes to be in quite a while. We've had little moments
Right.
where, you know, it's been in Venus's sign and Venus has been in its sign. And so, you know, we've had some opportunities in
Yeah.
that time. But to have, like right now, Venus also went into her own sign. So we actually have both of planets of good fortune in their own signs and willing to deliver some good things. So
Yeah.
there's, you know, we had a huge uptick this weekend. Maybe things are looking up, you know?
Definitely are getting bigger.
Well, and so if we want to, you Jupiter in Gemini, so this is the transition that we're going through. Jupiter in Gemini is in detriment. So
Yeah.
that means it can't give its gifts in the way that it would like to. It
Yeah.
doesn't, it actually is still very strong in detriment. It's going to
Mhm.
try really hard,
Mhm.
but it's going to create some issues in Gemini itself in communication,
Got it.
right? And so if you tie the ideas of communication and thinking with
Mhm.
this idealism and coming from our own belief systems, and
Yeah.
then add it to a planet that's not going to operate very well,
Yeah.
we've been in a year of, I'm going to say it, and maybe we're going to have to beep it out, but there's been a lot of bullshit with
Right.
Jupiter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we're going to see other, you know, we're going to see what that turns into.
So fascinating. So when I heard that, I wanted to say, or it started to bubble in my mind that I want to repeat why things can be in exaltation, fall, and kind of that metaphor that's about a queen or a king, and they're traveling. If they're in their castle, they have everything they want. If they're out amongst the populace, maybe they're at a place they don't like. And that's what we're talking about with the Jupiter and Gemini. But they're coming home. Well, are they coming home? No, they are exalted in Cancer at the 15th degree, right? Like it's gonna, like we're gonna have a little bit of time before it hits that grand
Yeah,
exaltation.
there's a degree of exaltation. Yeah, for sure. Look
Yeah.
at you. I didn't even know the
Well, I
exaltation
got
degree.
to contribute something, ma'am. You're doing such a good job.
Please, please.
You. But
Okay.
the sense that there's a level of comfort with the signs, and that a Gemini wants like a Mercury, wants something it can be fast with, and it wants something it won't get bored with. So it is a big deal that Jupiter's going into Cancer, because it's going to be welcomed and tended to and loved, etc.
Well, and if we think about what the last year has been like politically and socially,
Yeah.
the you can really see that Jupiter in Gemini energy with the half truths and the almost like Jupiter and Gemini can say whatever needs to get said for things to move forward and grow,
Yeah.
right? It will it Jupiter wants to create opportunities, and Gemini can bend the truth and can do all the, in Gemini, when you're looking at Mercury energy and horary, there's been some dishonesty, maybe, right? Thieves are
I
ruled
mean,
by Mercury.
Mercury tricked a turtle into becoming a musical instrument. He's a known prevaricator.
Tricky, tricky. The other thing that's really fascinating, if you think about it, from the if we think we're talking Gemini now, the
Yeah.
Mercury being able to whoever talk to whoever it wants.
Yes.
We have this really, it can speak to the gods and it can speak to the humans, right?
Yes.
And if we think about politics over the last year, there's been this really weird leveling of, like, I don't know how else to describe it. I'm going to say leveling of the playing field when it comes to who can run a country. There
I like
didn't
what you're
doesn't
saying. I
right?
felt there was a very strong backlash against American leadership that resulted in people kind of grounding what it is that they wanted as a country. So in Canada, you've got Carney, and I can't remember the other one. Like even the new Polish president is like, let's figure out what to do about Russia to Zelensky. So it's just this orientation towards, let's figure out how to fix these problems. So in that way, I agree with you. They're
Yeah,
reacting to Americans like jazz hands government with like, okay, we get it. We have to govern now.
right, right,
But
right.
it doesn't have to be about America. I'm an American, so it's easy to chime in with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, and really, I don't know. I just know what it's like to be in Canada and watching the news. And, we get a lot of American news. It's
Yeah.
different for us than it is for you guys. We are inundated in knowing what's going on in America for sure. But to me, when I try to boil down Jupiter and Gemini, it's just a lot of bad behavior.
I love that. That's hilarious. Oh my God. So I would go in a totally different direction.
Oh,
I would
cool.
say immigrants, people who are brown, social constructs that go beyond your own country, a desire or a curiosity about things that you may have thought of as exotic before, but now they may serve a purpose. And of course, for Geminis, I could see where it would create bad behavior, because Geminis are kind of being bankrolled and given the props to create hot air.
Well, and we should point out, if you look at the charts of it's, I mean, especially Canada and US
Yeah.
politics, there's a lot of Gemini
Yeah.
energy,
Yeah.
right? So the alternative to Mark Carney in Canada was Pierre Poilievre,
Right.
Gemini. Gemini with a Jupiter in Leo.
Wow.
In the US, we have Donald Trump, Gemini with a Jupiter in Leo.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so there's this, and he's not the only Gemini. My friend Greg Polkosnik, who has a Gemini issue, has made a list of bad Geminis, and like it's a long one. So if we, especially if you go back to the first Trump administration,
Yeah.
they were all Gemini.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that whole tribe was, sorry, I shouldn't use that word. That whole group
Yeah.
was Gemini. And so
Yeah.
we see that, we're kind of getting the repercussions of the Gemini bad behavior with
Yeah.
Gemini going through, or Jupiter going through Gemini, which is kind of, that judicial side of Jupiter. It's kind of
Yeah.
interesting
It
that
is.
it came out while
Yeah.
Jupiter was in Gemini. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that last little minute, I mean, I think it was more, I think Trump had a different transit, but the last little degrees of Jupiter in Gemini, like yesterday in the US, 6-5, we had Twitter arguments between Trump and Musk that were making everybody, either have Schadenfreude or what's happening. um, so I feel like it's a similar vibe to the last bits of Saturn in Pisces, where it was like too much water, and now it's like too much Gemini. Um, somebody should take their social media away.
It's
I mean, there, but for the great God go I.
well, and so it's funny. I actually I was gonna wear this t-shirt for today because it's very, to me, this is very Jupiter moving from Gemini into Cancer, but I couldn't find a good shirt to go with it. Can you read it or is it backwards?
It's invisible. And now Jesus is floating.
Yeah,
Jesus is,
so it's a picture of Jesus and
yeah.
he's saying, "Oh my God, you guys, I never said that."
I hate figs.
To me, that is super Jupiter moving into a sign it wants to be in,
Yes.
where, the truth will come out.
Yeah. I like
And we
that.
are going to have to backtrack over what Jupiter and Gemini did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to go to our notes because we have notes this time.
Oh, so exciting.
So when we talk about what do you, when you think about Cancer, and especially if we're not thinking about birth charts, but we're
Right.
looking at, collectively the energy of Cancer, what are some of the keywords and ideas that you attribute to the
Well,
sign?
the surprising one, because the Great Generation had Pluto in Cancer, is defensiveness. We had world wars and patriotism, and that turned into nationalism, that turned into wars. So that's one surprise thing. I have a Cancer moon, so I'm not going to talk about that, but I will say Cancer makes you feel things. And feelings, my husband and I had a little tiff last night, and I was so upset. I think I told you before, we ended it by saying, let's say I feel vulnerable, because instead I was going, I feel like this is happening, and I feel like this is happening. And he was like, that is a fantasy. And that's the key piece about emotions and Cancer. It is a symbolic, because you're coming from feelings. The language you use also may not be true, is because it's based on emotions. And
Right.
I'm front loading those because the rest of it is nourishing and wanting to care for things. And um, I love this word, but it sounds like a cuss word, fecund. We came down to North Carolina and there are so many bugs and so many animals, and we've already had 2 spring repopulations. Like, there's a whole nother set of bluebirds raising babies in our bluebird houses. And that kind of richness of life is sort of what I associate with Cancer.
Nice. I like that. Yeah. I mean, collectively, it's women,
Yeah.
right? Cancer is always going to be in charge of women, and fertility.
Mm-hmm.
And issues around women and fertility are
Mm-hmm.
generally come to the fore when something's in Cancer. And there's definitely a nationalism, or it does connect to that fourth house and
Like
the
tribal,
energy.
right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Um, Now the warning though is we have just experienced Mars through Cancer, and having a planet with a lot of energy going at being at the whim of the moon, which is what happens when a planet goes into Cancer because the moon rules Cancer. And so it's going to be very active because, you know, the moon runs through the zodiac every 28 days. So, you know, yeah. And we just had Mars go through Cancer where we all felt our moods and everybody around our moods go all over the darn map, you know, like it was an emotional time. And
Yes.
so the downside to having a planet that expands everything in the sign of the moon is that emotionally we're going to be pulled all over
Yeah.
potentially,
Yeah.
right? Now Jupiter would like us to be optimistic, so hopefully not false optimism.
Right. Well,
Um,
the idea of saying you feel vulnerable, if there are all of these sort of, I think about I don't know why, I think about Jupiter's bringing like visions, like kind of blue sky with the whiteboard, and you're kind of figuring out what do you want to aspire to and what do you think is super cool and that kind of stuff. So um yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and how we experience a planet is going to be different just based on, you know, what it's doing in our natal chart and what it's in charge of. You and
Yeah.
I are both a little biased because, you know, Jupiter and your sun are having a very intimate conversation and it rules my angles
That's
and is, you know, sitting with the ruler of my sun. So we both have very strong Jupiterian energy if
right.
nobody's noticed.
Yes. We have a rich uncle. Yes. He buys us stuff and tells us we're cool all the time. It's okay if you don't think so because of our rich uncle.
Oh my God. So I wrote down somewhere how long it's in there. It's in there till July 14th next year, I think. Something like that. And so yeah, we get a full year of this energy. And so I looked at the summer solstice chart
Oh,
to
yeah.
write an article for a newsletter.
Yeah.
And so the thing that's really amazing in terms of our own astrology is that the new moon that is coming up on June 25th has the sun. So a new moon is the sun and the moon together. And
Mhm.
they're together with Jupiter. They're all having a party in Cancer. Now, the new moon in Cancer every year is the most potent
Yeah.
lunation, potentially beyond eclipses that
Yeah.
we have, because this, you know, it's the darkness, which is the moon's
Yes.
place, it's in Cancer in the moon sign. And so there's, you know, it's a powerful time. And to have Jupiter there to make it even bigger, we have this incredible lunation. I'll give you the date, June 25th, and it's perfecting at 6:32 a.m. in the east. So that would be
Okay.
4:32 a.m. out here.
Yeah.
And it's sextile Mars in Virgo. Um, and then Mars is square, no, the lunation is square Neptune and Saturn in Aries
Isn't that
and
interesting?
quincunx Pluto. So like there's like it's been a while since we've had a lunation that like lights up all the planets at the same time
Well, I
like
think that the last one lit us up, but in a totally different way. That
that. Right.
Uranus conjunction was a very weird feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, we have Venus in her own sign in that chart. So we get to enjoy that. Um, and the other thing that's really interesting in the summer solstice chart is that we have out of 10 planets, eight between 29 and 3 degrees. And I only include the 3 degrees because it's Pluto and it's moving backwards. So it's going to come back into the earliest degrees. So when you have an event chart that has everything in the ending and beginning degrees, that generally portends big change, new
Yeah.
beginnings,
Yeah.
and also a bit of you don't get to know what this looks like in the future. There's a bit of an unpredictability with stuff that's in the earliest degrees, right?
Yeah.
And because it's like things still have to develop for us to understand what they look like.
Yeah.
So we haven't had a time in a while where we get to feel like we have a fresh start and a bit of a blank slate to move forward with. And that in itself is kind of cool.
I'm gonna have to burn some more stuff then.
Yay, I like that. And we're not getting away from the bad behavior of Gemini, because we have Uranus that's going to dip
My gosh.
into Gemini. So we're still going to get some bratty planetary stuff going on for sure. It's just going to come more out of left field because Uranus is the one doing the Gemini work. So that yeah, we're moving into an interesting time when it comes to the astrology, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for you, when you're talking to people one-on-one, what are the things that you would have them look at?
Well, I usually look if there are any obstacles, and I mean, specific to Jupiter, I do try to warn folks that it's the great benefic, it's a beautiful thing, but that can create some indulgence, and that can create some more is better when we always only need the amount that's effective, right? The littlest amount that's effective. Like in medicine, I've heard that before. And so it can create some overshooting of bounds. I'm trying to think if there was anybody who had real Jupiter problems, but I never ran across anybody like that. So it would be the warning, then it would be kind of relating it to how they had to manifest it, right? What they get to
Yeah,
manifest. And
right.
yeah, that's about it. I feel like that's not the most complete answer, but like I said, I haven't run
I
into
kind of put you on the spot. Sorry about that.
it.
Well, one of the warnings in general for all of us that I think that this just came to me right now, sorry.
Yeah.
But so because we have as it moves into Cancer, we have Saturn and Neptune together, who then they both just moved into Aries. So that makes the square.
We talked about
And
that.
so that's very stimulating.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
I'm sorry. We talked about that last week if folks want to check it out.
Okay. But one of the things to think about in terms of how Jupiter can contribute to that conversation. So because Saturn has Neptune fogging it up,
Yes.
right? And Saturn is our boundaries and our limitations and that. What might happen and what things need to be cognizant of is that with Saturn creates in a square like lots of stimulation, maybe conflict in that aspect. But it can stimulate to do too much because Saturn now is like that Aries energy wants to be bold and brave. And with Neptune is dampening Saturn's ability to
Right.
create boundaries and restrictions. And so this beginning, I feel like people might take on more than they can handle in this beginning of Jupiter and Cancer. So
Interesting.
that would be the thing that I might say to people like for the next few weeks, be as discriminating as you can with what you agree to. Even if something sounds really fantastic, check in with yourself and make sure it's something that you have the stamina to take on and that it's something that you want to commit to.
That's good.
Because Neptune is really kind of making Saturn's job hard.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, when I think about that kind of square, Jupiter in exaltation with Saturn in Aries conjunct Neptune, I tend to think of a resolution with a square, like what could the resolution be? And so it would be, or as my piano teacher said, it wouldn't be, it is. It is about sort of knocking away your illusions while you're actually creating them in a way. So I think about that Saturn, our boundaries. I think about it as kind of and forgive me, I don't know why I think this, hairy, angry, sweaty guy, like trying to get shit done, looking at the rules, and then some guy keeps coming over and going, it's beer o'clock, let's go. And then Jupiter, trying to fulfill whatever's supposed to be happening there. So I think it can be a time where we can self-reflect on our beliefs and self-reflect on our limitations and boundaries, but it might be after we have delusions of what those are. Like forgive yourself for learning after the fact, I guess I would recommend.
Right, because Jupiter has lessons. So if you
Yeah.
don't, right, Jupiter has something to teach. So if that, you know, you don't do the right thing according to Jupiter, it will teach you something.
Yes.
So that's something to keep in mind for sure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, opportunities and optimism. Oh yeah, travel and education. I forgot about those
That's and
associations,
long
right?
distance
Yeah,
travel
yeah.
or just travel? I can't remember.
It's usually, well, Jupiter is attached because it's attached to you know, expansion and then beliefs. It tends to get attached to cultures. And
Yes.
so that's you when we associate travel with Jupiter, it's always you're going into another culture.
Yeah.
So right, some people say it's when you travel by plane, but to me it's much more about, you know, like for a Canadian going to Quebec would satisfy that because you're going into a very different culture than what I live in the West, right? Even
Yeah.
from north to south in the US, right? That can be seen, you know, if there's a cultural shift that you experience, that's Jupiterian for sure. If it
Absolutely.
challenges your beliefs and ideas, then it's even better.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and so other than I was thinking about this in the shower because I have a lot of shower ideas.
Mhm.
Um, that so the signs, if we're talking about aspects that Jupiter and Cancer is going to make, you know, the ones beside Cancer, so you got Gemini on one side and Leo on the other, those ones are having a subtle relationship to Cancer, so not as obvious in what that's going to produce. But
Yep.
then once we move up to Virgo and Taurus, now we've got a sextile. So anything you've got in those signs is going to, you know,
Yes.
create opportunities that you're going to have to act on because
Yep.
sextiles are something you can't just, they're not going to come and happen to you. You need to act on them and do something with it. And this is the other warning of both of the happy planets in their own, you know, in signs that they love. Don't be complacent. If you need a rest, I don't want to stop you, but this is a time to take advantage of the positive energy and go
Yes.
after what you want and decide what you want and make a plan and set intentions and start a gratitude practice because Jupiter really likes it when you appreciate what it gives you.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, you know. And
Yeah.
then we talked about all of the energy with a square. So, you know, Aries and Libra
Yeah.
are going to get the square. So any planets you've got in those signs, and Capricorn's going to get the opposition.
That's right.
And so, you know, if you have planets that are in, say, Capricorn and either of those signs, you're going to get a T square if you don't already have it, which
Right.
is going to be a lot of activity and a
Yes.
lot of energy,
Yes.
right? And even with the square, that is like Jupiter coming along and making a square to a planet is stimulating and
Yes.
it can be a lot. And so, you know, monitoring your energy and knowing when to take a rest is another thing that I would tell people if they're going to have a Jupiter
Mhm.
thing come along, you know? Um,
I like to
and
think
then,
about, I think I often go into this with clients where we're talking about creating the right ground for the next situation to come up. And it's sort of related to the charity piece that we were talking about because it's remediation, right? If you know that Jupiter in Cancer's coming and you have signs in Cancer, or like you say, in the opposition or the square, or the sextile, how do you create the right ground? And I often say it's not one thing that creates support. Think of a train going over tracks. They don't put a big lump of cement under it because the vibration of the train will shatter it. They put a million little rocks, millions and millions of little rocks all along to absorb all that shock. And so, what are ways that you can kind of, or one can, um, focus on the nourishment and the excitement and the activity and make it as easy to access as possible with people you will want to see who excite you and situations that want you to be, you know, sort of nourishing and engaged, I would say, versus um, trying to feed something in your mind all on your own. Some, I think it's better to do it with other people.
like
I
that.
think if you're alone, you'll start to fantasize and start to create ideals that are not realistic. And people are great at knocking down unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're talking about, I was thinking about the planetary charities piece
Mhm.
before we came online and thinking I had this thought float into my head about how I mean, Jupiter is kind of the easiest
Mm,
planet to come up with charities for, because really anything you strongly believe in can fall into Jupiter, because
mm,
it's right. So
yeah,
it can be that simple. Now, if you
yes.
want to talk about tying the actual themes of Jupiter and Cancer together, anything that feeds mothers and children is like big time Jupiter and Cancer.
Yeah.
And now, if you want to add a layer, if you want to add the Jupiter layer onto that, that is run by a Catholic church or any, that is the Jupiter piece, right?
Yes. The organized,
So
the
yes,
social
yes,
reasoning. So,
yes. Or
uh,
so any social movement. Sorry, I
yes.
just, yeah, yeah,
No.
yeah.
Well, I was laughing because I was just thinking about the Pope deciding to go have his first big speech on the 14th, like a petty Betty, because there's going to be a big military parade for the president. But I also think, like, isn't that interesting, right? Like, they've come out against Palestine. They're kind of addressing stuff that they see in the world that they don't think is useful. And I didn't see it coming. I know that
Right.
previous Pope was kind of trying to create that vibe, but the current one is really just taking the bull by the horns.
Yes. Very, there's a bravery to that Pope.
Yes,
I like it. I like it a lot.
from
Um,
Chicago.
I have a very short experience of being in Chicago, and they don't take a lot of shit. So I kind of, assume the Pope would be the
And they're
same.
Midwest lovely. I mean, I would call them, and don't get me wrong, y'all, but I love Canadians. Sorry, but I do. I would call them junior Canadians because they're so
Oh,
nice and so fun, and
interesting.
they're very straightforward and they're very practical. It's more flighty in the bigger cities on either coast. There's more. I just think of Midwest folks as really grounded and like not taking a lot of shit.
Hmm, I like it. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely is a different energy than the last Pope. And if we talk about the things that happened last time Jupiter was in Cancer,
Mhm. Yeah.
the last Pope came in the last time Jupiter. I know, right?
Nice.
You can't make this stuff up.
So literally, like part of Jupiter is religious organizations and priests,
And the
etc.
Catholic Church is the largest one in the
This
world.
is it. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, yeah, you
Wow.
just can't. I know. It is forever shocking. So, but on that note, because I want to, we talked last week about, I tried to remember the acronym for F around and find out, because
Yes.
I felt like Jupiter and Gemini was going to be moving into Cancer, was going to be part of it.
Oh,
So I'm going to share with you what happened the last time. So this is the last time Jupiter was in Cancer was 2013 to 2014, June 2013 to July 2014. Edward Snowden leak fallout was the last time, happened the last time. It gets better. Black Lives Matter movement.
oh,
So talk about the FAFO.
yes.
This
Yes.
is exactly what happened the last time.
Kind of
Yes,
social that came out.
yes.
Mhm.
Bizarre, right? Just
It's
bizarre.
really intense. It's really bizarre and intense. Um, it's so interesting because I've had like really good conversations and really good crossover with folks who I thought were across the aisle and wouldn't be comfortable talking. But it feels like there's starting to be this, we want to live in a good country. This is what I think a good country means, or we want to live in a community. This is what I think community means. And so I wonder if that's not going to lead to something new that isn't polarizing. Do you know what I mean? That is practical enough to satisfy what people need, you know? Um, I don't know why I keep saying practical because a water sign is not practical. I can't emphasize enough how much fantasy plays a role in water signs. That's a problem.
Well, and the trick with Cancer, we didn't talk about this, but I'd like to go back a little bit to, Cancer is the most nostalgic sign.
Yes.
And so there is that danger that there's some kind of nostalgia that people decide they
Yep.
need to return to. That's always so subjective and not
Yes.
anchored in anything. Like it's so different for each
Yes.
person and anchored in their own whatever it is.
Yes.
And it's interesting to hear people, especially because when you define conservative, put everything on the spectrum of what parties, right, believe
Yep.
in. There's always this wanting to go back to the past in the conservative rhetoric of North America, anyways, Canada and the US for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Too far back.
And
Just a little
well,
bit.
and the weird part is that everybody's far back is totally different.
Yes.
Like they talk about this going back, but none of them, I don't think, have really had a full conversation of which part they want to go back.
Well,
They
I
just
feel,
trust that they all want the same thing,
oh,
right?
yes. That, that's
It's
interesting.
really, really interesting. So when you talk about this water and fantasy, that's kind of where I go in my head. Like, and we're all guilty of that at some point where we have some kind of we think we're talking about the same thing and we realize we're really not
I mean,
because
I
it's
think once we have an emotion in our body, it's very easy to try to grasp for meaning instead of just let it go away like a fart.
exactly. Exactly. The other thing too that we didn't talk about, so cancer in medical astrology or health astrology rules the stomach and our digestion,
Oh,
and
wow.
it rules the breasts and the
Yeah.
female reproductive organs.
Mhm.
And so, and in some traditions for chakras, the moon and the sun are in charge of the third eye. And
Wow.
that's what I use when I do chakra work. Yeah. And so there's this connection health wise. It'd be interesting to see because our whole health story is so
Mhm.
strange in North
Yes.
America right now.
Yes.
So interesting to see what kind of things come forward in terms of, diseases and issues that are attached to those parts of our body, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
laws that have changed and are constantly shifting when it comes to certain things around that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it'll be that's a story to watch too, because with Jupiter and Cancer, there will definitely be a shift in some way in those areas. I just don't know what that looks like. Although I feel like the laws about female reproduction we've barely scratched the surface on what
I
that's
agree.
going to look like with
I
Jupiter going through
agree.
Cancer for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it feels like we're going to see a lot more handmaids kind of stuff, and we're going to see the opposition to that. And I think a lot of people really get it that if you don't take care of a mom and her kids, you're not pro-life. And so there's sort of this sense of, we're missing the mark here. This is not working out. So,
I would say in the last year of being online and on social media is the first time, I mean, we've for as difficult as the last years have been,
mhm,
the discussion online about the pro-life movement and women's health and reproduction choices, it's the first time that I've seen men and women, but the surprise is men coming forward when somebody says speaks against abortion, and they
yes,
jump in and go, okay, great, but so what are you doing for the other side? What are you doing to take care of that baby?
good,
Right. And so there's a different discussion happening, and there
good.
are more people engaged in that discussion in a different way than we've seen before.
Oh,
So
that's
that I'm looking forward to seeing, because I feel like that side is getting bigger with
yeah.
Jupiter and Cancer. So it will be really interesting to see what happens. And now tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm not in the States and I, very selectively watch what I watch, but there seems to be an interesting turn of tides where your judicial system is starting to find its bravery.
Absolutely. So
Yeah, I'm not imagining that.
no, you're not. So Washington State in particular has always been really good at that. So their AG is really on it, and I can't remember if he made it to governor or not, but even in states where they have voted down anti-abortion measures, there are GOP operatives coming in to shut down direct democracy. So there's just a really interesting bunch of intersections, I would say. But this summer they're keeping a woman brain dead but alive so that her kid can be born and her family doesn't want it. And as you know, in America, healthcare is brutal, so they may have bankrupted that family, and they don't want it. It's literally wrenching for them to have to live through that. And I think there are more stories like that where people are becoming aware that if you haven't devoted your life to female reproductive care and the complications that are abundant in birthing children, for example, 30% of all women go through a miscarriage in their lifetimes. Now there's one state that wants to criminalize miscarriages as if it's intentional. And so there's just a lot of because it's so bad, there's an opportunity for people to kind of wake up and see, like, oh my God, that's terrible.
And so the reason I ask about it is that, like, because, Jupiter does, it has this dominion over the judicial systems, um, that there feels, these little peaks that we've seen of judges getting brave and going,
Amy Coney Barrett backing up, right? She stepped back a bit. And so do you think we'll see more cracks or fewer?
Oh yeah, I think we just saw a preview. This is my interpretation of just the astrology of it,
Yeah.
that we kind of got little glimpses, right?
Yeah.
Um, Almost in with Mars and Cancer. Like, it's like, here's a little preview of what happens when you get brave,
So
Mars,
right? It's so
right?
fascinating to have Mars and then Jupiter rolling through, and
Yeah,
then in Virgo by that point. Like,
right,
I know Virgo's
right.
sensitive, but
Let's
it's all,
attack the details, right?
yeah,
Let's attack
yeah,
the details and the
exactly.
minutia of this crap, and let's unwind it.
Yeah. Let's be practical and active. That's the vibe
Yeah,
I'm feeling for sure.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, I feel like we just had like a little tip of the iceberg. What is possible
Yes.
when, first of all, people get back in touch with their beliefs and ideals, like in their heart,
Yes.
instead of where, with this weird place people have evolved to, that they don't even know how they got there,
Yeah.
mentally and whatever.
Yeah.
So that we're going to see this reevaluating of that. And also when other judges see, oh, okay, I do have that power, you know?
For sure. And that comparison is really apt. I'm going to interrupt for a minute and expand it to other institutions. I
Sure.
think universities are Jupiter as well.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
an amazing thing going on in the States where, like, Trump starts with the craziest stuff. He'll say, you have to say Gulf of America or something like that. These weird things that don't make any sense, but they're just loyalty tests. And he asked Columbia for something, I can't remember what. Columbia caved. And now that he's just coming back again and again, well, now you have to do this and now you have to do this. Whereas Harvard did not cave and sued his ass, and they have gotten back the ability to have international students. And they've just been going nonstop. Like, we're going to see you this way. We're going to see you this way. If that's how you want to play, we've got plenty of lawyers and plenty of money. And there's a real potential for universities to become social feeding grounds for that practical next step, right?
Yeah.
I don't have, like, I love, somebody was saying to me today how leftists need everybody to believe like they believe, which I am always surprised by,
Hmm.
because I'm like, I don't believe the same things that my friend who is trans from Lebanon believes, because I can't. I don't have that lived experience. And, other people, like, to me, I think of the left as impossibly difficult to organize because you can't make everybody fall into lockstep. But I get it. That's a big holler for folks to say that left wing people are trying to strong arm people into doing stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm the leftiest person on the leftiest day of the leftiest year in the leftiest decade. And even I'm tired of the bickering. And folks who are conservative, and I've gotten shit for it, and I'm okay with it because ultimately we're gregarious and that's going to win. So how do we want to enjoy our time? I want to enjoy it. do we want to spend our time? I mean,
Yep. Yep. I had about 75 thoughts while you were talking.
I
None of
love
them landed.
I want to hear.
None of them landed.
Oh, rabbits. But that sense of like unwinding the, like, let's say Jupiter in Gemini is the devil's advocate, right? And I've heard this thing where they say people who are offended and hurt should always have a group of people who can't take jokes to go hang out with when they feel like that. Because it's a dig. Right? If you're hurt feeling, you may become humorless.
I know. I remember. I have a thought. I have an important thought. Sorry.
I want to hear it. I was hoping one would come back.
Well, so as you were talking about the right and the left, it in my head, I was looking at Trump's chart and
Yeah,
trying to remember where this is happening for him in his chart.
right.
And so, and that's, if you want to look at how this impacts you, not just the planets it's aspecting, but which house is it going to go through, or houses, depending on what house system you use. Because for me, it'll start in the fourth and end up in the fifth. And that's the transit for me. But for Mr. Trump, if we take the Leo rising with Regulus on the ascendant, he has in that chart it's 29 Leo,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And he has Cancer 11 and I think it's 10 and or 11 and 12.
Mhm.
12 is the karma house.
Wow.
And so there's this karmic, like you've got judicious Jupiter and Cancer coming through, place of karma,
Yeah.
and hidden enemies.
Oof. So
So, I mean,
guy on Twitter. I
yeah,
mean, there's so many conjectures about, is Trump declining in cognitive ability? And there's this sense that he's not, I mean, I think he's one of these guys that doesn't believe in like germ theory or something. So he believes he's strong and immortal and everybody better kind of reflect that back to him. But he's not the same guy he was even before he got voted into office. So there's some story about him not making it for the 4 years. And that would be interesting because then we'd need to look at JD Vance and, at some point, maybe we'll look at Peter Thiel.
sorry, I'm distracted because I went and tried to look up his chart.
No, I think it's worth to find out. I mean, in terms of
it's not 12th house. I lied. So he has Cancer intercepted in the 11th.
Oh.
And it'll transit his Mercury, his Saturn, and his Venus. That's interesting.
That's more big fights.
But it squares his Jupiter.
Yeah.
Because he's got a Jupiter in Libra.
More big fights.
Neptune and his Chiron. Yeah. Interesting.
That no foreign leaders want to come to the White House any longer because they know that they just do some weird shenanigans when you get there. Why aren't you saying thank you? We're very great. Are you aware how great we are?
Well, I know here, I don't know if this is true for you guys, but whenever there's like, he says something or there's a headline or whatever where it's suspect. Yes. The meme here is that picture of Mark Carney looking at everybody like, what the hell? Like literally we're the universal sign for what is he talking about?
We're deep into taco trucks now.
Yeah. I heard. Is it true that there's a bunch of taco trucks parked outside the White House, or there was this week?
I saw that they were asking for it, but just that they know that they're getting him, that he didn't like that comment.
He sure didn't.
Yay, we're gonna do it a million times.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's interesting too, and we just think globally the shifts that happen. Like so many countries came in and went, we don't want what's happening in the US. We're gonna try something different. Yeah. And that the timing of that just before Jupiter moves into Cancer is really it's telling and interesting as well. Really, yeah.
So I love that talked about Trump's chart. What should folks do if they want to find out more about Jupiter in their own chart?
So you can go to like astro.com or in the comments I'll put Consult the Sky. My website has a tools where you can go get a free chart. Yeah, and go and look and see. So wherever that little 69 symbol, yes, Cancer symbol makes a 69. It's also the easiest one to
You have to
remember
make babies somehow.
because of it.
Not that
Oh
way
my
though.
goodness. Yeah. So go look for that. And so you'll see where Jupiter is going to be, right, over the next year. It will retrograde. I didn't write down it's retrograde in the fall for sure. Actually, I should probably just grab my ephemeris. That's faster.
Yeah, you can do that. And then I will share that. I believe we'll have more articles and shows about this. So we'll be able to provide you with deeper insights as we go along. And of course, we want to hear all of your questions and curiosities about Jupiter in the chart.
I didn't realize it actually makes it all the way to 25 Cancer in November before it retrogrades back.
Wow.
So it like flies through Cancer and then backtrack. So that's kind of interesting because as you know, as you mentioned, the exaltation is in the middle, right? And so we actually are going to get to do that 3 times. We're going to
Wow.
get to do it. So one of the things to keep in mind is that um, everything that happens up until November, because it's going to retrograde through 25 degrees to 15. So it
Wow.
actually is going to station at that 15-degree mark. Yeah. And so whatever happens between the 15 and 25-degree mark direct,
Mhm.
you might have to be patient about because
And
it
that's an
it might
event.
need to get tweaked and reviewed and revisited, or even something. I don't know about you, but I have noticed that one of the patterns that happens when something starts during the direct and then there's a retrograde is that sometimes it doesn't happen in the direct. You
Right.
think you lost an opportunity, but then
Yes.
whoever they did decide to hire didn't work out, say. And when the retrograde hits, you get presented with it again. So
Interesting.
little things like that can happen. And of course, we will use the word opportunities because that's a Jupiter word, right? So the
Oh,
things that come up are
100%.
opportunities, whether they're positive or negative, they're opportunities.
I say that for Saturn too. I mean, it doesn't feel like it because it's more like work. People are demanding work, but it's the same vibe. They're both about get out there, go do some cool shit. Pardon my language.
Right. Yeah. Well, and Jupiter, I mean, Saturn and Jupiter are very different just in the sense that Jupiter does have the ability to drop something in your lap.
Right.
Saturn can drop something in your lap, but
You have to
it's not a full grown thing when Saturn drops it in your lap. There's going to be a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of your energy.
absolutely.
Um, whereas Jupiter's opportunity could be good at the first moment, but could be better if you impart some of the Saturn hard work into it.
Interesting. Interesting. So yeah,
Yeah.
so we are cruising towards the end of our hour. And I guess in summary, I would say, if you're irritated about something, say, I feel vulnerable. Don't believe your own stories.
I like it. I like it. And I'm going to leave you with we've got this really fantastic 3-week window of possibility.
Yeah.
And so, and this has actually been ongoing with clients lately. It's, the most beautiful way you can use Jupiter is to um, understand what you want, go a step further and figure out why you want it,
Yes.
and then build your hopes and dreams and wishes around that, attracting in the
Beautiful.
why as opposed to the what. If we can enter Jupiter in its happy place, um, from a place that is really solid in the feeling of the life we want to have for ourselves instead of the car or the house or the $10,000 or whatever it is, right? The
Yeah,
what that brings into your life, and then just be open to whatever possibilities and whatever gets delivered to you is
I love
really the most positive way to work with Jupiter. Suspend expectation and hope for the best.
that's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. So next week, we're going to do something slightly different.
We are. So we've have this incredible conversation that we had with Andrea
Absolutely.
Gers. And we talked about remediation and health astrology and all sorts of really cool tips and insights. And she's just so smart
Yes.
and right and just has so much knowledge. And so we have been working very diligently. Lillian has worked her ass off on editing this conversation. It
Tracy
was
too.
two
You're both
hours.
guys.
It was 2 hours. And so it's not short. But what we're going to do is we're going to release that next Friday. We're not going to be live. And we're going to work towards being live on Facebook and YouTube the following Friday. And we'll continue to be live on Fridays moving forward. But we have some tech things to work out, and we really want to get that interview and conversation with Andrea up. And we'll return to our scheduled stuff in 2 weeks. What I want to say before we jump off, though, is next Friday, I'm speaking for Llewellyn is doing a conference that is it's not all astrology. Yeah, so it's got some witchy people and some pagan and some all sorts of stuff for Llewellyn authors. So I will actually put a link in the comments. I am speaking next Friday at noon all about what Venus is really about. And yeah, and Stormy, who's also Stormy Grace, has a book coming out at this around the same time my book is coming out. So she's doing a talk this week. So I think everything starts on Wednesday and it's 7 or 10 days or something. But I will put all of those details in the comments, and so people can go in and check it out. So yay! Thank you so much, friends. This was so great.
You too.
Thanks, everybody.
Couple of weeks.
Great. Yay. And I don't know how to stop it.
We're learning. We're learning about technology.
What if I stop on here? No.